Hey everybody, today's March 22nd, 2024, and today we're going to talk about the price of Bitcoin and where I see the price of Bitcoin headed towards in April 2024. Before we begin, please read the disclaimer. You can pause this video as you read it. Okay, so where we left off last month, was around this area, and what happened was, my prediction was I thought we were going to spend a little bit more time in this channel, but what happened was we basically ripped up to new all-time highs, which took me and I think a lot of people by surprise because usually historically Bitcoin has not hit all-time highs before the halving, right? And halving is next month around April 20th, and that is when the rewards is going to reduce in half by 6.2 from 6.25 to 3.125, right? And so yeah, historically Bitcoin has not hit new all-time highs until after several months after, right? If we're talking about the 4-year cycle, it's usually in the parabolic phase, which is in this case would be 2025, right? So this definitely took a lot of people, including myself, by surprise. But I guess the ETF inflows were a lot stronger than people expected, which again, we did see a sell the news event, right, when the ETFs were approved, and so this caught a lot of people by surprise because it faded and then it reversed, and then we saw a huge push up higher to new all-time highs. But now we're starting to pull back a little bit, and I think part of it, the reason is, of course, we have resistance back here. So let me get a cleaner chart. As you can see, we had a double top, right, in 2021, and double tops are usually very bearish signals, and we saw a huge plunge around 77% to the bottom, right? And now we're coming back up to that resistance level. So I'm expecting there to be more resistance at this level because usually past support and resistance level tend to be more of a challenge, right? For example, if you look at the price of Bitcoin, around 30,000 was a strong, was a strong resistance level, right, for us, because it was strong support in 2021, right? And in 2022, during the bear market, we broke below it and we plunged all the way down to 15,000 handle, right? And then last year we spent a good chunk of the year trying to break above 30,000, right? We failed here, failed again in last July, and then more recently in October of last year, we finally, third time the charm, we finally broke through, right? And then we finally just rallied above here on the news of also the tailwinds from the spot Bitcoin ETFs. So now that we've broken through, now our next major level of resistance, of course, is the previous all-time high. So what do we have to expect for April, right? Going back to our chart here. Now April is going to be interesting because even though we're starting to pull back a little bit, we've had a pretty strong run up here, and but if you look closely, you'll see that Bitcoin right now is coming off we already have 6 green monthly candles in a row, which is like the second time we've ever had this many, right? And if we close this month green, that'll be the 7th monthly green candle in a row. And usually that'll be the most green candles in a row we ever had. And usually there's a good chance that the price should pull back, right? We should have a red month, or red 2, or maybe I wouldn't be surprised if we have 2 or 3 consecutive red months after that, right? Because it's very rare that we have this many green monthly candles, right? Last time we had this many monthly green candles in a row was the bull run in 2021, right? Late 2020, early 2021, and then back here, right? Leading up to the first run up in early April of 2013, right? So just based on the monthly candle, I think there's a pretty good probability that we're probably gonna have red months. Now, it doesn't mean we're necessarily gonna crash, but I do think we're going to, over the next several months, move sideways, kind of like what we saw last year in 2023. After this impulse move higher, basically impulse move higher, grinded sideways, and now have another impulse move higher. I wouldn't be surprised if we grind sideways for a couple months before pushing up higher, right? So I do think that next month will probably not necessarily crash, but I do think we're going to stay within this, either this range, the 60,000, or maybe come down to like the high 50,000 range, right? But I do think we're probably gonna be stuck in this range for a while, and that's gonna be very healthy, right? It's good for the market to consolidate once in a while instead of just going straight up. And of course, like I said, with these monthly candles, with so many consecutive green monthly candles, the probability is that we're probably gonna see like at least 1 or 2, maybe even 3 consecutive red monthly candles in a row. But I think another best case scenario is that we just move sideways for a while instead of just crashing down. Just move sideways for a while, consolidate through time, and then push up higher, right? And so let's look at other data to sort of corroborate what my beliefs, that the next month will probably be a sideways month within the $60,000 range, maybe plunging down to the mid to high 50,000 range, but I think we're going to stay mostly down to 60,000 range, right? First is that we look at the sentiment. We're in a lot of greed right now. We're basically extreme greed for like the last several sessions, right? Look at this. Yesterday, extreme greed. Last week, extreme greed. Last month, a lot of extreme greed. Now, so we're coming down a little bit, but there's still a lot of room to run before we hit into at least neutral and, you know, and also into fear, right? So there's a lot of room for the market to pull back before we start getting sold, right? Even looking at the RSI, we're basically in neutral territory, so there is room for us to come down to oversell territory. But even when you look at the weekly, right? Look at the weekly. We're still in overbought territory on the weekly, right? And this level is very similar to the bull run in 2021, right? We are at the cycle high, so there is a lot of room for this to pull back. And with the monthly, we're starting to poke above into the overbought zone. There's still room to run up higher, but like I said, with this early, we're still considered early in the cycle, right? Usually with a 4-year cycle, and we're sort of like on the year before the big run, right, which should be in 2025. So the fact that we're already overbought on the monthlies shows us that we're moving very quickly in the cycle, and that I wouldn't be surprised if we pull back a little bit more, right? And again, more chances. So before we move on to the more of the indicators, let's look at the hash rate, which is looking healthy, a bit of a pullback, but still moving along, right? But look at these charts, right? This is the two-year multiplier, right? This 2-year multiplier tells us that as long as when the price of Bitcoin is below this green line, it's oversold and it's a good time to buy. When it's above this orange red line, it's overbought and it's a good time to sell. Right now we're in the neutral territory, but if you look at where we are compared to the last few cycles, we're pretty much near like the middle of the cycle, right? We've gone up significantly. So I think it's healthy for us to pull back a little bit more so as to give us more of a base to push up even higher, right? Because last time we went up too quickly and I think we peaked prematurely. You know, a lot of people thought last cycle we would go above 100,000, but we ended up peaking around 69,000. So I think part of it is because we moved up a little too quickly. And right now we're moving up even quicker, right? We're hitting all-time highs before the halving, right? Next one we can look at is the Pi Cycle Top Indicator. Pi Cycle Top Indicator is a great way. It's a great indicator to call the tops, right? It's been very accurate for the last few cycle tops, but even if you look closely here, right? This line is peaking above the green line right now, right? Usually when we peak above the green line during the middle part of the bull cycle, it tends to pull back, right? If you look over here, once we hit above the green line, we tend to come down and touch the orange line, right? So that's a pretty significant drop. And even in our last cycle, we hit the green line, we end up pulling back into the orange line, right? And right now we're peaking right above the green line. So will this price fall back to the orange line, right? I mean, that's a pretty big drop, right? But of course, if we look at things objectively, then it would make sense for it to follow the last, and that would bring it around down to 50,000 range, right? So that's a pretty sizable drop. But if we follow what this chart is telling us, then that's something we should at least be prepared for mentally, right? This chart, the golden ratio multiplier, tells us that we're getting close to that the red band, right? When we got close to the red band last time, that was near the middle of the cycle, right? This is like the equivalent of being in the summer of 2017, right? The summer of 2017, that's like the equivalent of being in the summer of 2025 next year. So see how fast we're moving so early in the cycle, right? So it does make sense for us to pull back a little bit. Based on the previous chart, we should pull back at least to the green line, right? The green line is around, again, 50,000 range. So another indicator telling us that we might pull back to the 50,000 range, right? Looking at this one, we're hitting the gold line or the yellow line. Again, very similar to the middle of the cycle of the previous cycles, right? Telling us that we might pull back a little bit. Rainbow chart telling us we're in the green zone, right? Again, very similar in that we're in the middle of the cycle compared to the last two cycles, right? And of course, this is the price forecast tool, which combines different tools to which cause the tops and the bottoms. And right now we're getting closer to the purple line, although in the bullish trend, the purple line goes above the red line, right? And we're getting pretty close. So we're sort of like the equivalent of being summer of 2017, right? Or December-ish, January of 2021, right? December of 2020, January 2021, right? So again, we're moving a lot faster, hitting all-time highs a lot faster, which, you know, on the surface looks bullish, but I'm a little worried that we might be moving a little too quickly and that just like 2020, 2021, we might end up peaking a lot faster a lot sooner and at a lower price than we potentially can hit if we just take our time to consolidate sideways. So I think what's going to happen is, based on everything, all the charts that I just went through, based on the fact that we have already 6 consecutive green monthly candles in a row, and we possibly could close this a green candle. Ideally, we want to close this as a 7th green candle, right? Because if this closes like this could be like a shooting star. And just like when we saw these high wicks, right, these shadows, like we tend to see the price plunge, right? And that's definitely what we don't want to see. If it does follow, like what I just said, you might see us plunge down to the 50,000 range, right? Which of course would not be pretty. But again, I think that ultimately would be healthy, right? But what I do want to see us do is probably come down to at least stay in the 60 range, maybe down to the 50 range, and just move sideways for a couple months, right? Again, just like what we saw last year. We impulse move higher, move sideways for a couple months, and then another impulse move higher, right? We maybe chop sideways for a couple months, and then move up higher. Of course, other things to look out for is inflation data, right? Inflation data is important because Bitcoin tends to move like a risk-on asset, right? So if inflation did move up a little bit, but we want to see inflation move down towards 2%, the Fed's target, right? Right now, the Fed fund rate around over 5%. So as long as the inflation data continues to cool more, I think that'll give more tailwinds for the price of Bitcoin to move up higher, right? But I think really what I'm expecting for the month of April and the next couple months is for Bitcoin to just move sideways, right? Chop sideways in the 60,000 range. We might see panic selling down to the 50,000 range, but ultimately I do think that the 50,000 should hold, right? And maybe consolidating around 50, 60,000 range is probably the healthiest. And just fight to hold 50,000 at the very least as support level, right? But for now, Bitcoin ultimately is looking very good, looking very healthy. And as long as we have these structural changes where we have structural higher highs and higher lows, then we're still technically in a bullish trend, and we have to give the benefit out to the bulls, right? But again, it is healthy for us to consolidate a little bit. We've had a significant room higher with multiple green monthly candles in a row. I would not be surprised if April, May, or maybe even June are red months, right? Maybe like at least 2 of them are red months. It'll be very healthy for the market. But yeah, I'm expecting April to be a pretty neutral month with some panic selling perhaps down to the 50,000 range. Now, that I could change my mind if the CPI data in April 10th it comes down to close to 3 or maybe below 3%, and the Fed might start cutting rates. If the Fed starts cutting rates, then obviously I'm gonna change my bias toward more bullish. But for now, I'm cautiously optimistic. I haven't sold my positions. I haven't shorted anything. I'm just holding my positions, which I got into, down at the 50 to 20,000 range, right? So so that's my prediction for the month of April, and for really the next couple months. It's just moving sideways, right? Defending 50 to at least 50,000, 60,000 ideally, but just moving sideways 60,000 range. And definitely will update you guys going forward based on any new data, based on any CPI reports, and see what I think that will change, if that will affect the market going forward for the remainder of the year. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it helpful, useful, or informative, please like this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe for updates. Appreciate all your support. Thank you again, and have a great day.